And welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is, let me say that again. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me today is Luke Jackson, our managing editor of Pressbox, all things Pressbox. And joining us in just a moment is Dan Zielinski, who has started his own, and I don't mean he started it yesterday. He's been around a while. He has a baseball prospects journal is the website, baseballprospectsjournal.com. And we're going to talk to him about some exciting stuff involving the Baltimore Orioles and Sunday's start of this year's draft. But first, I got to tell you about the Costas Inn. That's right. Everybody in Baltimore that eats steamed crabs knows about the Costas Inn. They even know about them if they just like crab cakes, crab soup. But the Costas Inn is located at 4100 North Point Boulevard. Not everybody is still comfortable going in and dining with, of 75 or 100 people. But you can dine safely in your own home by picking up at the Costas Inn. That's right. Costas Inn during the pandemic stepped up their game for curbside and takeout pickup. Check their website out. It's CostasInn.com, CostasInn.com, and you can pick out your food, pay for it. They pack everything immaculately. It's unbelievable. Never a spill, no fuss, no muss. The Costas Inn, 410-477-1975. You won't regret it. Tell them Stan the Fan and Luke Jackson sent you. All right, now to introduce our guy, Dan Zielinski of baseballprospectsjournal.com. Dan, tell us a little bit, first of all, about your website, how long it's been in existence, and then we can get into the nuts and bolts of this year's draft.
Sure. Stan, thanks for having me on. It's always great to talk with you. I've been covering the draft now for 7 years, interviewing top prospects, writing in-depth stories on those guys. I think I'm over 400 now over those 7 years. But this year interviewed 77 of those guys for baseballprospectjournal.com. And Baseball Prospect Journal is a website that's been around since I want to say 2019, was doing baseball coverage for a couple other different websites before that, but just dedicated to covering the draft, covering prospects as well. So just somewhere you can get more in-depth information on some of the top draft guys each and every year.
All right. You just told us before we started, you've got to get content out like as soon as Monday on the 2023 draft. Okay. Is that correct?
Right. I'll be releasing top prospects for the 2023 draft class on college and prep guys come early next week.
All right. Well, it's pretty apparent the Orioles right now, currently with a 10-game winning streak, over 500. We're not going to be in the talk about number one picks next year, but we are in picks. We are in the talk about who the number one pick is this year in 2022. If you had their situation, tell us who you would take and why.
Yeah. If it was me drafting, I'd take Termarr Johnson, the middle infielder from the Georgia high school prep ranks. He's a guy who, even though he's only 5'10", 175 pounds, one of the smoothest left-handed strokes I've seen from a hitter in the prep class in a few years at least. The guy just has great bat to ball skills, really understands the strike zone, plate discipline, things like that, and hits for average, but he also hits for power, even though he is a little bit of a smaller guy. So overall, I think he's really the kind of complete prospect. Now, I know he played shortstop in high school. I think he's probably better suited at second base in the pros, but he's still an up the middle player, and he's definitely going to give you a lot of value offensively. And I think part of it with Johnson as well is I think you'll be able to sign him for a little bit under slot. The Orioles projected slot value for the first overall pick is $8.8 million. I think you could save a little bit of money there and use that later on in the draft as well.
How much money are we talking about? Is that like a $2 million saving or $1.5 million?
Yeah, I would say 1 to 2 million, somewhere in there. I think you'll save more money than with him than you would like a guy like Drew Jones or Holiday as well.
All right. Now, before I turn you over to Luke, in other words, if you were just picking the best talent and money was aside, and trying to be strategic about how you spend. The Orioles have the highest of all time, I think, $18+ million for this draft. But who would you be taking on sheer talent alone?
I'd probably lean towards Drew Jones. You have to kind of nitpick between the top four prep guys, and those are kind of the top guys in this year's draft. But Drew Jones, the outfielder out of Georgia, prep kid who obviously is related, the son of former Major League superstar Andrew Jones, five-tool guy, 6'4", 180 pounds, and really can do it all on the baseball field. He's just like his dad, really strong defensively in center field, and then hits for average and power offensively from the right side of the plate. So I think he's the most complete prospect. He's the one with maybe the least question marks throughout the last 6 months or so. And I think he's the best player in this year's draft.
All right, Luke, go ahead. I know you chomping at the bit to talk to Dan.
So you were talking about when we started how right after this draft, you'll get on to the 2023 rankings. So, my question is, with these top guys that we're talking about right now, with like Elijah Green, Brooks Lee, Drew Jones, how long have these guys really been in the picture as top 2022 guys? Because it didn't happen overnight, right? How long have they been in the picture? Has it been like 4 or 5 years, or has it been less than that?
For some guys, it's been less than that. First, I guess starting with Elijah Green, the prep outfielder from Florida. He, a year ago at this time, was considered the top prospect in the draft. Had some swing and miss concerns this spring. Part of it's nitpicking, but he's been around and kind of the guy for the last 2, maybe 3 years. Brooks Lee, the shortstop from Cal Poly, was a first-round projected pick coming out of high school 3 years back. Chose to go play for his dad at Cal Poly. So he's kind of been always in the mix as well. But a guy like Jackson Holliday, son of Matt Holliday, he's a guy who throughout the year just really improved his draft stock overall. He went from being maybe a second, third round pick to obviously now in the conversation to go 1-1 here in a couple of days. So it's been a kind of a mixture of both. Elijah Green's kind of the most famous name from a prospect standpoint, but Drew Jones has kind of been on the radar for the last year as well. Just not maybe as high as 1-1 as he is now.
So let's talk a little bit about Elijah, because obviously there's a local connection with his dad having played for the Ravens for a few years. He was a tight end here, and his son is built like a tight end, right? And if you look at a lot of the top picks the Orioles have made, they like big, physical, strong guys who profile as up the middle guys. And Elijah certainly fits that as like a guy straight out of Central Casting, right? So tell us a little bit about Elijah and what makes him special as an athlete and as a ball player.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, 6'3", 225 pounds. I mean, he's built, he's muscular, and he's also extremely quick. He's a guy who is going to play center field in pro ball and has above average, at least speed, going to steal some bases and cover a lot of ground defensively. So a lot to like with him, five-tool guy, above average power as well. I guess the biggest question mark scouts have kind of raised this spring is just sometimes he expands the zone. He's an aggressive hitter and makes loud contact, but sometimes it kind of costs him and he struggles a little bit against elevated fastballs, some breaking pitches as well. So he's a guy I still really like. I still think he is going to be a superstar in pro ball. He just needs a little bit more coaching in terms of understanding plate discipline, strike zone, things like that. But overall, I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think part of it, like we talked about a little bit ago, is he's just been on the radar and under the microscope for so long that sometimes these guys get a little stale. Scouts start nitpicking them as well. So Elijah Green, really like him, and I think he's going to be a top 5 pick probably come Sunday.
So, and in watching all of these, I watched all these guys on YouTube. I haven't watched these guys in person, but just watching these guys on YouTube. You mentioned Tamar Johnson's swing, right? I watched like 5, 6, 7 of them, and his swing is the one that really jumps off the screen as being like, that's a big league swing right now. Like, I don't even know if, developmentally you would have to do a whole lot with that swing. Like it's the kind of hit tool where it seems like to me that you could put him in like high A right now and he would be fine. But he's 5'9", he's a second baseman, and typically 5'9" prep second baseman don't go number 1 overall. But you did mention the idea of the underslot. Can you explain to our viewing audience about what the underslot strategy is? Obviously, the Orioles have done it the past couple of years, and why it's like the MLB version of trading down in the football draft, right?
Sure, definitely. Like you said, the Orioles are kind of accustomed to doing this the last couple of years with their picks, but the Orioles have the highest bonus pool allotment. You're only allowed to spend a certain amount of money on your top 10 round draft picks. The guys who go from 10 to 20 have an assigned value. And if you go over that $250,000, then it counts against your signing bonus as well. But in the Orioles case, it's about $17 million. The slot value, which is just pretty much a dollar figure Major League Baseball puts on every pick, just as kind of a starting point when it comes to negotiations, is for the first overall pick, it's just under $9 million. And most first overall picks don't usually sign for a slot value. Henry Davis signed at least $1 million last year under slot value. Spencer Torkelson 2 years ago signed for slot value. This year, I don't see that being the case for any of these guys. I think whoever they sign, you're at least going to save a couple $100,000 with them. But for Johnson's point, I think you're going to save at least $1 million. And the money you save from each projected slot value, you can use on other picks. So if they save $1.5 million, let's say, on the first overall pick with Johnson, they can go use that at pick 33 and maybe try to drive a player down the board, talk to him before the draft or as the draft is going on and say, hey, Kumar Rocker, we'll give you $4 million. And because the 33rd pick has a lower slot value, it's around just over $2 million. They can use that money they saved with the first overall pick and apply that towards the Kumar Rocker contract, for an example.
Dan, you mentioned Kumar Rocker, and he's an interesting guy to me. But what I'm not understanding is, so let's say the Orioles say, "Hey, Kumar Rocker, we'll sign you for $4 million at 33."
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that number out.
Yeah.
What stops the Cleveland Indians at 18 from taking Kumar Rocker and kind of destroying the Kumar Rocker balloon? But I guess you have to have 3 or 4 tricks in your bag, don't you?
Right. So teams will go to players as the draft's going on, or even leading up to the draft, and say, hey, we really like you. We'll take you in the second round if you're there, and we'll give you $3 million. So then the players advisory group will go to teams and say, he already has a deal for $3 million. So if you can't beat that, he's not going to sign for you. And that's when you see players start coming down the draft board, because they have these kind of pre-agreed on deals, and teams either don't want to blow up their signing bonus pool, or they don't want to call the player's bluff and risk taking someone and then them losing that player and him going to college, for say.
Not to spend too much time on Kumar Rocker, but given his situation now, where he sat out, he didn't go into Major League Baseball, into a Major League Baseball organization. Wouldn't that be a dangerous gambit for him to tell teams that, hey, he's not going to sign with you?
It could be. It all depends on if the plan works, and that's where it comes to making sure you have good representation and who understands the draft, and also having some faith in the system as well. I think for Rocker, there's going to be a team that pays him well. There's a few teams that have a lot of money, a lot of picks early on that they can invest in him and his potential. So I think that's always the risk you play, but usually, I don't want to say most of the time it works out, because we've seen it not work out in the past, but it's part of the risk you take when it comes to kind of that playing that game and trying to work your way down the board to get a higher dollar amount.
And before I turn you back to Luke, aside from the injury situation, is he almost Major League ready, where he could come in and help a team late this season?
I know some scouts I've talked to have said that exact same thing. They could see him getting drafted and pitching out of a bullpen, maybe as a multi-inning guy later this year. I think overall he might be better suited as a reliever. I don't know if he can handle a starter workload. And as a reliever, he's got the fastball and slider that are just too above average pitches, outstanding pitches, and kind of a devastating combination with his high 90s fastball and that strikeout slider. So I think that's a very real possibility. And if it doesn't happen this year, he could definitely make the major leagues next year.
Yeah. And if there are any real injury concerns with him, why would you want to waste any bullets in the minor leagues with him? You know,
Right.
22 years old. So we've seen Mike Elias's group in 3 different drafts at this point, although one of them was a very short draft. What kind of themes have you picked up on with how Mike and his crew have drafted? So what I've picked up on personally is they like big physical guys who hit the ball hard, toolsy guys up the middle, college position players, right? And don't like to pick pitching early because they're confident that their developmental group can develop arms later in the draft who they pinpoint as being fits for their program, right? What have you picked up on with how Mike and his crew have drafted in Baltimore the past 3 years?
Yeah, they definitely prefer those up the middle guys. And I think they kind of overall prefer guys who are a little bit more developed, whether that's the college route or kind of advanced high school guys, whether that's Gunnar Henderson a couple years ago, or even guys like from the college ranks. Heston Kjerstad was a guy who, like you said, was a big body, solid producer at Arkansas, and they took him early a couple years ago. Colton Cowser, same way, different kind of build a little bit, but he was a proven performer at the college level. So I think they really prefer.
I saw Colton Cowser hit a home run yesterday at Bowie.
Yeah, I like him. He's good. But I think overall they just prefer those up the middle position players who have that proven track record. They might not necessarily always have the highest ceiling of guys that are picked kind of around them in the draft, but they have a higher floor as well. And I think the Orioles have shown in the last couple drafts that they want to acquire as many assets as possible. So that's why they're willing to maybe take an underslot guy in the first round, because then they can use that money and kind of spread it out throughout their draft to get a little bit more talent by volume instead of putting all their eggs in a few baskets when it comes to the draft.
So they obviously the Orioles pick number 1, and Stan, correct me if I'm wrong, they also have 3 other day 1 picks, if I'm not mistaken.
They've got the 33 comp A pick, got their own 42nd pick, and then the comp B pick that they picked up from the Marlins, I believe. That's 67. So they've got 4 picks day 1.
Right. So as I said before, one thing they have not done much is take pitchers early. However, in this group this year, there are a lot of pitchers who are highly rated before, who are coming off Tommy John surgery and things like that. You know, could you see a scenario where they take a college arm with one of those later picks who was coming off Tommy John surgery, who was very highly rated before? Can you see a scenario where they go in that direction, or do you expect them probably more to stay on the path that they've been on, which is the safer route, going with the college position players up the middle and seeing how things play out down the line?
No, I definitely expect them to probably take a pitcher with one of these 4 picks. I think with the way this draft is set up, you have a lot of college arms that either were hurt or maybe didn't perform up to expectations. So you have this big group of pitchers who are all kind of going to be sitting there late first round, early second, into the second round. So I think the Orioles probably end up taking a pitcher. One guy I would watch that would be intriguing for the Orioles is Connor Prelip, the left-handed pitcher out of Alabama. He's a guy who hasn't pitched really since 2020, his freshman year, and he dominated guys as a true freshman that year in that pandemic shortened season. But then last year he had Tommy John surgery in May, hasn't pitched since. He's had some bullpen sessions, thrown for some teams, but hasn't pitched in a live game since his freshman year. But if he was healthy and pitching like he did his freshman year, he would be in the mix to go 1-1. Big time fastball, big time breaking ball. Needs to work on his changeup, but there's a lot to like. High potential with him. And I think one team is going to overpay him late first, mid first, or sometime in these competitive balance picks. I don't see him falling too far, because I think some team like the Braves, maybe the Orioles, are going to step up to the plate and pay him a good signing bonus and get him signed, because his potential is so high.
He's a left-hander.
Left-handed pitcher.
Left-handed pitcher. I just wanted to talk to you because I know you study this very closely and you can tell you know your stuff. How big an advantage is having the first pick the second day? Does that give the Orioles any kind of edge sleeping on the whole gamut? It's almost like having a second number one pick in a way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't think it necessarily hurts. I don't know if there's a huge advantage just because, again, you can play those games with the signing bonus amount, but I think it does offer you at least some time to think more about it instead of having a short time window, 5-10 minutes to kind of pick who you're going to take next. So I think that definitely helps. I don't think it's a huge advantage though, by any means.
Okay. And talking about the guy that I like out of all these, and I don't study it nearly like you or Luke has, but I love Matt Holliday as a baseball player. And I've watched a little bit of his son, on YouTube, Jackson Holliday.
Yeah.
Is there any shot that the Orioles could pick Jackson Holliday?
There's definitely a shot. It just comes down to, do you prefer Drew Jones or Jackson Holliday more? Because I don't see either of them taking a big cut from the signing bonus figure that's projected for the first overall pick. Jackson Holliday, definitely, the Holliday family, they don't need the money. So it's not like $500,000 is going to really sway him one way or the other. So he's going to hold out for his kind of dollar figure. And if worst case scenario for him, he goes to Oklahoma State or he falls down the board a little bit and gets his price tag somewhere else. But if he goes to college, I mean, he's going to go play for his uncle, his dad's around the program as well. So there's definitely some leverage involved with Jackson Holliday. Mm-hmm. And it really just comes down to, you prefer Drew Jones or Jackson Holliday more. Most scouts I talk to seem to prefer Drew Jones more, but the Orioles, like we've talked about, kind of have an unconventional way of sometimes going about things. So Jackson Holliday, really good player, definitely has all the skills, could be a 5-tool type shortstop. So a lot to like about him. And I don't think the Orioles would be wrong by any means by taking him. If that's
and Drew Jones is his representation is Scott Boras.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. All right. Luke.
So we haven't talked about the college ranks too much in terms of the number one pick yet. Tell me a little bit about Brooks Lee in terms of, can he stick at shortstop? And does he project to be a guy like an infielder who hits for a lot of power, or more a guy who hits for contact, gets on base, and is that kind of guy at the major league level? And also, how quickly can he get to the major leagues? Could he be in the major leagues like this time next year?
Yeah, we'll start just overall who Brooks Lee is. I really like him as a player, as a person. I think his makeup is phenomenal. Switch hitter, which I think is always a benefit. And first, talking just about his skills, he's definitely a little bit more hit over power. He does hit for plenty of power and will hit for plenty of power in professional baseball, but he's definitely a guy who likes to hit the ball hard to both gaps and gets on base at a high clip. Defensively, you asked about shortstop versus third base. That's a question scouts have been going back and forth on for at least the last year. I think he has the skill set to play shortstop long-term, but I think he's probably better suited overall and probably likely ends up more at third base. That's not a knock on him. It's just there's only so many shortstops in Major League Baseball. Plus, when he's not an elite athlete, that doesn't help his cause by any means as well. So either way, he's kind of more of an offensive first type of guy anyways. Definitely offers a lot offensively. And to me, he's the top college player in this year's draft and definitely will be in the mix to go in the top 3 spots. I still think the Orioles are talking about Brooks Lee and kind of figuring out what his price number would be, even though I think they do go the prep route. But Brooks Lee, I like him a lot, and I think he's a guy who could be in the major leagues come probably 2024.
There are a couple other college backs who could go in the top 10 at least. One of them is Kevin Parada, right? Catcher from Georgia Tech. I'd be very surprised if the Orioles took a catcher. And then the other one that I have in mind is like kind of a third base, corner outfield, first base, DH, maybe Jacob Berry from LSU. Let's start with Berry. First of all, does he have a chance to play third base or the corner outfield, or is he really going to be a first base DH type?
Yeah, For me personally, I think he's first base DH. Scouts I talked to are a little bit split. I think some are trying to be a little optimistic, but most see him as kind of that corner infield guy, DH at best. So Jacob Berry definitely can hit. I wouldn't personally take him in the top 10 picks simply because all of his value is tied in his bat. He's not going to really give you much defensively, any value defensively if he does play a position besides first base. So definitely a really good hitter and someone who definitely will hit for some average and power. It kind of reminds me a lot of Spencer Torkelson, a guy who really was good offensively throughout college, and defensively most saw him as a first baseman, maybe hoped he could play third base. So Barry definitely has the experience playing those corner outfield spots and third base, but I just think long term he's best suited for first base.
Yeah, and the issue with those guys is like if they don't hit as much as you think they will in the major, like what do you have? Like
right.
if Torkelson doesn't hit as much as we think he will, what do you really have? But Kevin Parada, he's another guy that a lot of people seem to like. First of all, is he a catcher long term? And he had a monster year with the bat at Georgia Tech. Good conference. So what kind of player is he?
Yeah, he's really good. He kind of proved some doubters wrong. He made some strides defensively this year. I still think he has some overall work to do defensively behind the plate, but scouts praise his work ethic and the strides he has made. And offensively, he's a guy who hits for average and power, and definitely more or less is an offensive first guy. I think he can stick behind the plate long term. Defensively, he's never going to be maybe a gold glove caliber guy, but I think he has enough athleticism. I think his arm strength is at least average enough that he's fine there. He probably will get some time at first base eventually, but if you're fine with a guy who's an average defensive catcher, then you'll put him behind the plate. And I think also too, when it comes to potentially the robot umpire, that'll also maybe help him a little bit too, to remain behind catcher or behind the plate and play catcher. But I think if you're drafting him, you're taking him because of his offensive skills and kind of worrying about the defensive spot later.
So I might have been, go ahead, Stan.
We're talking with Dan Zielinski of baseballprospectjournal.com. Know you got a busy day. Luke's got one more and I got two more, and we'll let you get out of here. All right.
No, you go ahead, Stan.
Okay. I was going to ask you about just the University of Maryland. We were all shocked about how far they went this year and the level of play out there. Are there a couple names from the University of Maryland that people in the Baltimore area should be paying attention to on day one or day two?
Probably not for sure day one. It's hard because those guys play in the Big Ten. The competition isn't as great as the SEC, and even though they do have some talent on their roster, it's not necessarily pro talent. So I don't think you'll hear any Maryland guys drafted on the first day, and definitely some of those guys who are juniors and seniors maybe come day 2 or 3 when teams are trying to cut a deal later in the rounds 5 to 10 or even after the 10th round. So I don't think you'll see a Maryland guy in the first round, but definitely maybe come later in the draft, you'll see a few of those.
Can I piggyback off that one,
Yeah.
Stan?
Go ahead.
We were talking about 2023 guys before. What kind of prospect is Matt Shaw, the shortstop from Maryland?
Yeah, I mean, definitely helps that he's an up the middle guy, and definitely helps that he's got another year to perform. With the 2023 class, it really centers around the position players right now, with guys in the SEC and ACC who have really performed well. So I think this summer is going to be huge for some of these guys who necessarily aren't at bigger marquee baseball programs, but have had some success in their first couple of years. So we'll see what kind of the 2023 draft entails, but definitely he'll be in the mix in the early rounds, top 5 rounds.
All right, last question, and then Luke and I, when we let you go, Luke and I are going to kick a couple things around for a couple minutes, but I just want to go backwards a couple of years and wonder, as a writer of this kind of content, do you ever go back and reanalyze picks? And I'm using Gunnar Henderson as an example. Is what he's accomplished now kind of blown you away, or is this the kind of player you had him down as 2 years ago.
Yeah, for me personally, I interviewed Gunnar Henderson numerous times throughout that draft cycle in 2019, and I always thought he was kind of an underrated guy, a guy with who was a little bit more of an advanced high school player and maybe didn't have the projection left as some of the other guys who had a little bit more risk. But I've really always liked Gunnar Henderson. I think his ability to hit for power is notable for a shortstop, and then also just to play the shortstop position. I think he's a guy who can play shortstop long term, probably could end up at third base. But Gunnar Henderson's a guy I think scouts were a little low on, frankly, coming out of the draft that year. And I think he's shown kind of what I evaluated and thought of him. But I think he's definitely a guy who's knocking on the door of being in the major leagues sooner than later.
Last thing, you watched Mike Elias both when he was with the Astros organization, now with the Orioles. They've got 6 picks of the top 107 picks. Do you think he'll come away in very good shape?
I think so. Mike is always really good with kind of figuring out the board. They don't always do things conventionally like we talked about earlier, but they get a lot of talent when it comes to all their draft picks. So I think even if they take a guy like a Drew Jones or Jackson Holiday first overall, they're definitely going to get a really good player at 33, a guy who probably should have been a first round pick sitting there for them. And 42 and 67, again, 42, they're going to get another guy who's that fringe first round type. So I really like the Orioles, kind of how they're positioned with these 4 top picks in the first 67 overall picks. And then also just the signing bonus total they have. I think they're going to end up with some really good players depending on how they go with the first overall pick.
All right. He is Dan Zielinski of baseballprospectjournal.com. He's one of the best young guys in this field. Thank you for spending some time with us, Dan Zielinski.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Get on to your next Zoom. I know you got plenty of them today. Luke and I will pick it up here. Luke, I came in thinking, because I've read his stuff, that the Orioles were going to pick Andrew Jones. I prefer Jackson Holiday over Jones, basically because of who the old man was.
Right.
I thought Andrew Jones was an amazing center fielder, but had some issues offensively. I always loved Matt Holliday as a player, but I come out of this now agreeing with you that I think that Tremar Johnson might very well be the guy that they go with.
Yeah, and it could be a situation where there are like 4 or 5 guys who can do the job. Kind of like 2019, where they felt like they had 3 guys who could do the job, and Rutschman, Witt, and Vaughn. And if they had come away with any of those 3, obviously, I think they picked the right guy. I think we all think that they picked the right guy, but any one of those 3 could have done the job. I think this year is a little bit similar. I think Mike Elias mentioned that he thinks that there are a lot of guys who could do the job at number 1, and that if you think that they're all roughly the same talent level, roughly the same future outcomes with them, do you look at cutting a deal with the player that otherwise would go around 5, 6, 7?
Right.
That might be Tremar Johnson. And when you watch it, it's a smooth left-handed swing. It's a big league left-handed swing. It's a 5'9" second baseman. And
Joe Morgan was about a 5'7" second baseman.
Right. And physically he looks a little bit like Jose Ramirez, although Jose is a switch hitter and Tremar is a left-handed hitter only. So I'm very interested. I think everyone's really interested in what's going to happen on Sunday. And we were talking about this before we went on the air. It's going to be an energetic draft room. You got the big league club playing well for the first time in the Elias era. They've got 4 of the top 60-some picks. That's going to be a really energetic draft room. I wish I could be there. I wish I could be a fly on that wall. Would love to be there. Would love to write about it. But I don't think they're going to invite me in. I really don't.
One last thing. Now, he brought it up unsolicited from us. He brought up the concept of Kumar Rocker being taken by the Orioles. Some smart team is going to do exactly what he said, and and maybe it could be the Dodgers or something like that, a team that's got some question marks in the back end of their bullpen for this year. But boy, that would really you put Kumar Rocker and sort of XL Brian Baker or something like that. the Orioles bullpen suddenly gets a huge lift.
I think there's a pretty good chance that Kumar Rocker is pitching in the playoffs for somebody this year, because again, if there's any physical issues with him, he had a little shoulder cleanup surgery last I think it's several months ago at this point, but he obviously failed his Mets physical. And if you have any physical concerns about him, you're going to want him in the big leagues right away, so that you're not wasting any bullets with him in the minor leagues. So I think you could absolutely, if he gets drafted to a good team, I think you could absolutely see him in September. You could absolutely see him in the bullpen in the playoffs.
And before we go, that left-handed pitcher that he talked about from Alabama, but what's his name?
Connor Prelip.
Connor Prelip. Do you know much about him?
No. Okay. Yeah, he really hasn't pitched very much at Alabama because he's been hurt. Yeah. But like Dan said, and even when he did pitch in 2020, the season wasn't very long. So you really haven't seen much of him, but what we did see of him was electric. So and there are like 8 to 10 guys, and Ben McDonald was talking about this on the Massive broadcast the other day, that in the first couple rounds, there are like 8 to 10 pitchers who have recently had Tommy John surgery who could go in that range. And so that's just that's I guess that's one of the themes of this draft. I don't know, but could the Orioles take one of those guys? I'm not sure. Like, taking pitchers with physical risk does not seem like something Mike Elias would do. That's certainly not something he has done to this point. But I don't know if that will change. I suspect that it probably won't. I would be, with one of those 4 picks, if they took a pitcher with physical concerns, I would be a little surprised by that, just because that's not something that they've done to this point. They haven't taken that gamble before. So
one of the things I like about the sound of him, though, is that the surgery is well behind him.
Yes.
And yet there probably hasn't been a rush to get him back, in game action.
Right.
So that surgery, I have a feeling no pitcher is going to just totally take their time getting back out and earning money. But maybe with him, the fact that surgery is 2 years ago might mean
that's a good point. That's a great point. It's a great point.
All right. Well, it's certainly going to be entertaining, and I'm sure you and I will get back together on here and talk about some things next week, after the draft is over.
Absolutely.
All right. We've been brought to you by the Costas Inn over at 4100 North Point Boulevard. I stress, because I talked to Nick and Pete about this over at the Costas Inn, lots of people are very comfortable going in a restaurant, a bar, and being around people, and that's fine. Nobody's saying you shouldn't be, but there are a large segment of people that just aren't comfortable yet with that. The Costas Inn has that remedy for you, and that's their curbside pickup. 4100 North Point Boulevard. The phone number 410-477-1975. Go to their website, CostasInn.com. You can order on there, pay on there, and then just pick it up, and everything is immaculately packed. There's no spills, no fuss, no muss. The Costas Inn. For Luke Jackson and Stan the Fan, we'll say bid our dues right now. Go O's.